Hi everybody, this is John from Old John's Vlogs, and today I'm going to be talking about the Carlton Marsh Nature Reserve's history dating back to 1909. If you like my vlogs, please click on the like and subscribe buttons. It will help the channel a little bit. My concern is that I'm not getting many people viewing at the moment, so I'm going to rethink as I go along. But all the information is taken out of my diaries, and you'll probably know by now that I've spent a long time, 5 years of my quality time, helping to develop the Carlton Marsh Nature Reserve, and I spent a lot of time there, and also I was the ideas man. Well, I was called the ideas man, and a lot of my ideas were incorporated, I'm glad to say. For people who don't know about nature reserves, they're usually obviously a piece of land set aside for nature, but that land has to be managed, and if you've got water going on site, that's even better, because every time you go on site to have a look, things could be different. Anyway, enough of that. I'll go back to the diary and read you what went out. What happened was that I'd been doing a lot of topics down at the Carlton Marsh Nature Reserve. Some I thought I'd spread myself a bit too thinly at times, and I was also chair of the subcommittee, because people complained we weren't moving quick enough. They felt they needed a subcommittee where they could air their views, and we did that on site in one of the earlier hides on site. And a band of people got together, and about 15 of us all crammed in this little hide, all talking about what we wanted on the reserve, and then I took it back to the main committee. Some people didn't think that worked properly, but most people thought it did work, and it was moving forward all the time. So one of the projects I did was to look at what had happened in the past on the site and what was happening on the site as we did it, to see if we were actually making it worse or better, because one of the locals had complained and said, see less birds on this site now than there used to be before you did anything to it. So I thought, well, if I can get some research somewhere and find out, that'll close that argument down. It took me 3 months research, and I came across this book in a local library. I think it was the Cudworth Library, and the librarian wouldn't lend it out because it was one of a type, so I had to keep going back to the library and writing all this stuff down. And what had happened was, an headmaster of a school, I think it was called, yes, St James's School it was called, and the headmaster was Mr Frankler, E. Frankler. He got his class to undertake to do a 12-month survey there in 1909. Wow, I thought all my birthdays had come at once. And I decided then after that to do my own survey and go down as much as I could on site, as well as do the work that was required on site, and see if we could do a cross-reference as to what birds were being seen on the site there in the 70s as opposed to what was in 1909. Now, there was ring ousel on site in 1909, and I was the first person to see ring ousel on the Carlton Marsh Nature Reserve. And actually, 2 or 3 ousels came down in bad weather. Usually a moorland bird. That's why I don't see them often around here. But back then there was jack snipe, curlew, redshank, sandpipers, woodcocks. I never saw a woodcock down at Carlton Marsh. Water rails and a storm petrel. And the corncrake was the only one that I'd never seen down at Carlton. So I was pleased with the survey to find out that we were getting the same birds as they were back in 1909, and so that closed down the argument by the locals to say that we were not doing what we should have done. The petrel, by the way, that I saw, the storm petrel, was me and Cliff Coleman were on site when an RSPCA lady came down and asked us if we could identify this bird that had been caught. Looked as though it was dying. She got it back into good condition again, but she couldn't identify it, and would we identify it for her? Well, in the end, we'd never seen a bird. It was a storm petrel, and in the end, we'd never seen a bird like it before. And she said it couldn't fly. Well, we were in the throes of enlarging a lake at that time. The water was still running in, and she let the bird go, and he didn't know what to do. We thought it was going to die, but then all of a sudden it raised itself, flew in a circle, and it was, at that time we realised it was a storm petrel, because we'd only ever seen them flying. And it did a circle, it dropped back down as though exhausted, and then it did another circle and took off towards Winterset, and somebody logged it saying that there was a storm petrel at Winterset, and I don't think they'd had one before. But we cleared that matter up, because sightings have got to be genuine, and that's another aspect actually. I only once ever said I'd seen a bird and I hadn't seen it, and I just started bird watching when I was 20 years old, 25 years old, something like that. And I said to this man, yes, I can see a golden eye, and I couldn't actually. My binoculars weren't strong enough to see it, and I never lied after that again. In fact, I went over the top to make sure that whatever I saw, I got written. I wrote it all down. Anyway, not only were birds on the site in 1909, of course, there was animals recorded, and this man had got this class to do a wonderful piece of work, and I did manage to get it published in one of the annuals that we did at that time. The annuals are probably still in the local library, so if anybody wanted to chase history up on the Carlton Marsh or Cudworth itself, I think they'll still be there for you to see. I think any bird watching I did at that time, and any sightings I saw, I used my initials JJ, so if you come across a book with JJ in it, you now know who it is. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's have a look at the animals then. There were bats, hedgehogs, squirrels, not sure if they were red because it didn't say, rabbits, stoats, field mouse, weasel, yeah, we had weasel, water rail and water vole, fox, otter. Now, I never saw an otter down at Carlton Marsh, so I'm assuming the water was very clear at that time, and it was flash flood situation where water didn't stay in there long. When it rained, there was a lake forming, as the saying flash flood means, and then it used to dry out. Much the same as Rabbit Inns is doing at the moment. When it rains there's a big lake forms, and as I speak that lake's now dried out. So yeah, otter, that was nice. There was mice and rats on site as well. I did not see a field mouse. I just mentioned I did not see an otter. Right. Later I looked for St James's School's notes, which I found out was still they were now I apologise for that, I'm just reading my notes. All the information then had gone to the Snydale Junior School, and I went to see the headmaster to see if I could get in touch with him, and Mr Brazier, I believe he was, and he gave me permission to go through all the files that they had from the old school, St James's. But on my first visit to the school, he was on a tea break, so I couldn't do anything. Let's see. Well, at that time, a great friend of mine was Cliff Gorman, and Cliff and I did loads and loads of work, and also Keith Bannister. Don't forget Keith Bannister, because like myself, Keith is in the background sort of thing. This is the only time that I've ever brought myself forward to be in the limelight at all. So let's not forget Cliff and Keith Bannister. I believe Keith Bannister still does work on the site on Tuesday mornings, clearing shrubbery and stuff like that with volunteers. I don't know if Cliff's unable to do that work now. I'm certainly not able to do it. So it would be wrong of me to go down at Tuesday morning and look at all the work that they were doing, because they might think I'm interfering, and that's always a problem when you're being involved with something at great length. You feel that people are doing it wrong, and if you start interfering, they'll stop going there. And as volunteers, you need as many volunteers as you can. Volunteers like me and Cliff back in the day, 70s, we made a lot of mistakes, and I'm sure the new volunteers will also make a lot of mistakes. But the idea is to keep going, because wherever you go in nature, it's changing all the time, it's growing, it's getting out of hand. Some of the trees we put in back then are now to be pulled out because there's too many of them in there. I'll explain all that sort of stuff later. Anyway, when I'd been to the school and the headmaster wasn't in, I went to Cliff's home, and we had a couple, and we discussed the information, and then Cliff asked me if I brought my binoculars, which I carried with me everywhere at that time, and he said, I think you better sit down. Have some information for you. And the information he had was that for the first time in the area, I believe, there was a Dartford Warbler, and we went down on site to have a look at it, and it was being ringed at that time by a man called Philip Wordsworth. Philip Wordsworth was a man who set the Barnsley bird watching group up with a man called Dave Standring. Unfortunately both